Okay, part 73. So we're talking about jealousy, right? Do you really need to be jealous over your spouse if they come to you and someone stole their lip virginity or virginity? Um, sexual thieves did whatever was done in sexual theft before they meet their God-given spouse. Do you really need to be all that angry or jealous? Um, so this is to cast that down. So basically, I touched on my experience with Daniel Newby, and this part two goes to my God-given spouse too. Um, considering, how he expressed himself while driving back from Nassau to um, our area where we live in Orlando. Um, One of the things I touched on was Daniel Newby in part 72. Right, because this is part 73. So this part 72. So I just wanted to make sure that this is known. The night that my mom wanted to just go and get something to eat, and she just normally would call Daniel Newby to help her get around in Jamaica. I did not want to go. I think my stomach was hurting me at that point. But she insisted that I would go with her, and I went. Um, and then we went to the Duns River Falls and the scenery, soaking it all in. My mom basically, she really liked Daniel, and then the scenery, and it's just beautiful. So anyway, that definitely affected me. My thoughts on certain things, changed my mind about certain things. And how old was I? I was about 21. Um, so that's really, what is that? 2007. So, and I met Christopher Delgado in 2016. All right. Um, yeah. Anyway, going forward, um, so that's part 72 touches on that. Um, and one of the things about what I noticed with Kimon, she was more on the quiet side. So she probably knew about wizards and devices, and I didn't know. But anyway, he got his God-given spouse, if she is his God-given spouse. Um, um, so um, that is that. So, old man took my lip virginity. Old man took my lip virginity. Age 9. He was drunk. I was sleeping. I explained that, I think, in part 70 or 71. Then I touched on Daniel. Then there's this other person that I believe he must have, like, he did whatever that person did, and I didn't like that person doing that to me. So, but with that individual, whatever his name is, I know his name. He smoked cigarettes, and so kissing someone that smokes cigarettes is like, oh. So I was not interested. And then he did something. I wasn't too excited about that. We never had sex, and so I just perceived that that was just not going to work out. Okay, so there you have that. Now, um, backtrack till probably like what 1999 or 1998. Neville, it was a bunch of like classmates encouraging me to talk to Neville. I didn't know about wizards' devices and sorcery and witchcraft that would go on devices that would influence classmates to behave like that or to encourage that kind of stuff. But they wanted me to kiss him. I wasn't really interested. Then eventually it happened. Wasn't that great, but we were supposed to be boyfriend and girlfriend. I think I was about what 13, if not 12, something like that. Um, I don't think that lasted long. I think his sister was very concerned, like she don't want her brother's heart to be broken or whatever. Um, but yeah, we just talked a lot on the phone. Um, so that is that. Then high school happened, but at age 12 through Ebony, um, like she was like kind of gyrating on a broomstick in the classroom, and then she brought up masturbation, and I'm like, I didn't know what that was, and she started to, and I think another classmate said, "You don't know masturbation?" And so that's how I learned masturbation. Um, First, they didn't go thoroughly into it. When I went home and I Googled it, or that's how I was introduced to it in some way, shape, or form. And this is a Catholic school, so you can be very holy, but it just depends on where the child has been exposed to whatever. So, um, and in public school, I guess you'll be exposed more to certain things as a child than in Catholic or private school. So anyway, at age 12, I think I went home. There was the internet going on at that time, but it's like the slow flowing internet kind of thing where you hear that kind of noise. Um, and I Googled masturbation, and at that time we didn't have parental controls or anything like that. So pornography came up, and I was introduced into the world of pornography through that way. I learned about masturbation that way, which is not the best. First of all, to learn about it via that way is not, I mean, whatever they brought up about masturbation or how it's done or whatever. Um, Nobody in middle school or high school should be learning that stuff because it teaches you to be self-centered, selfish. It teaches you like sex is just for your pleasure or selfish. Um, um, so that's whoredom. So a lot of people are walking around as if, hey, well, I never had sexual intercourse, or I never did this, or I never did that, or I wasn't in adultery. And basically, I mean, I don't really care too much about anyone's sexual past, but these people who want to be regarded, and these people, women who want to compete with me, they may try to use these things in my past as ammo. Or whoever it is, the wizards and sorcerers may try to use these things of my past. But Jeremiah 2:27 touches on adultery and how they're speaking. Um, I would touch on it. Saying to a stock, "Thou art my father," and to a stone thou hast brought me forth. For they have turned their back unto me and not their face, but in the time of their trouble they will say, Arise and save us. So basically, to your hand, you're saying, Thou art my father, or no, pardon me. That's what the wizard wants to say. And you're going to hear that, or you're going to hear me say what I want to say, because they're overriding my speech with the device. So basically, in masturbation, you're saying, You are my wife. You're saying to your hand, Thou art my wife, or Thou art my husband, or something like that. So it's still a form of whoredom. It's not really producing the fruit. As if you're going to do masturbation, it should be along the lines of the goal of production. For example, if somebody is at a donor bank, it's done for production purposes, or you're with your God-given spouse and you do it because it helps, in whatever way to get things going for reproduction, to have a child. That's where it should be in. And I think Married at First Sight, I think there was one season, if it was a season 17, there was one season where somebody tried to demonstrate, well, the use of sex toys, I guess, to help in a certain way, but for marital purposes, right? For with the goal of reproduction in mind. I'm not talking about go get a dildo now. There are certain things that you can use and it helps for reproduction purposes. You can speak to a sanctified sexologist if that exists, or a Christian counselor or a marital counselor when it comes to that stuff. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, so masturbation is a type of whoredom. People don't really discuss that from the pulpit. That's understandable, considering, certain mindsets, and they feel like, well, certain conversations need to be held in certain places, but really and truly in this country, it needs to be put on blast from the pulpit. Because a whole lot of people are doing it anyway. Now that that's out of the way, okay. The next relationship after Neville was Mike, and we didn't do anything. I think it was I was either age 16, 17, one of those. Nothing. Then my mama didn't like him, or the wizard didn't like him. He was Haitian. And so I broke up with Mike. Anyway, God knows all things, right? Next, Richard. So Richard was talking to Cardina. So I told him, no, you have to break off things with Cardina first, then talk to me. So I wasn't about stealing anybody's man. And then what we did, kissing, the rub up and thing, he let me know that wasn't doing anything for him. And then there was something he did, and he told me like not to tell anybody, because I guess maybe he didn't like that he did that. I didn't know he was gonna do that, but I don't know if my thinking at that time was thinking, well, we would eventually, I believe to some point, I believe that we would eventually get married. So I was talking to him off and on between age 16 and 17. But when he decided to call me a word, I was like, oh no. God didn't bring me this far in life for me to be treated that way. Oh no. And so I believed God for better, and I went to prom just with a female class friend, just at the time, instead of with Richard or whatever. And Richard knew that I didn't want sex before marriage, although he was into that kind of stuff. He even showed me something and I said no to it, and he understood. And he paid attention to my body language response when he wanted to do that kind of stuff, and he respected or stopped himself from doing certain things. Then, and then the wizard was on the device saying stuff to me, like I need to sacrifice some things if I want to keep a man. That's And I did bring up that they did say through my classmate at age 17 it's time to have sex. Okay. Then there was Jake. We did some kissing, probably twice. I was supposed to meet him after the prom, didn't see him. So whatever with Jake didn't work out, but that's pretty much what that happened with Jake. Anyway, then Enoch, I met him knowing that he was a part of the Christian faith and whatever. That's what really, like, I guess, motivated me to be very, I guess, this person to initiate things. Um, he was talking to Cheryl. I don't know if Cheryl went away or something like that. And I believe my mindset or was molded at one point to think that if you just kiss him and by the kiss you can win him over. So I did do that at one point. More than likely the wizard was behind that. And Enoch kiss up and rub up or kiss up and feel up that happened between us in some way, shape, or form. But no, I wasn't rubbing his penis though. So anyway, so that Enoch was between age 17, like June, age 17, and my birthday's in July, and I believe I stopped talking to him like before I went back to college in the first week of September or around the second week of September of 2003. So I was 18 by that time. No, I'm not a pedophile. If you look at the definition of a pedophile, that's not what I was. That's not my mindset. So don't try to use that, which the wizard did try to bring that up and pervert that relationship to make it more than what it was. I did get to a point where I spoke to Enoch and I said, well, is it between Cheryl and I? And he chose Cheryl. So of course I did some cowballing after that. So nobody should be bringing up these relationships, but because they didn't work out, they chose somebody else and whatever, they moved on. And we never had sexual intercourse. So anyway, that's out of the way. And I really didn't talk to him again after that. I kind of hung out with Joshua and Ludacris, and we went to Six Flags, to Haunted House, and just chill. Then I think before Enoch, there was this guy. He lived in the building, and so I guess we would like connect in a certain way. In high school, I mean, we weren't best friends or close friends, but we would just be like, hey, and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess he was like basically, thinking if we kiss and figure out if this could work, right? That's another thing that the wizard or sorcerers may try to inspire us to do. They think it's through kissing chemistry that you can find your spouse. But my young self or our us being young didn't know much. then, right? So we kissed, didn't really, wasn't all that great, wasn't good, whatever. So we just never bothered pursuing anything. And that was after he spoke to, I don't know if he spoke to Militia on that level, but that's out of the way. Then there was this Grenadian man. I think that was before Enoch. I stepped out of the house. I had on a Tommy Hilfiger dress, and I think I was on some highway. I don't know if it's Linden Boulevard or Kings Highway or something. And this man approached me and asked me for my number. And I'm like, okay, Then he mentioned, like, I guess we were talking and walking. I can't quite remember everything, but he must have said something and say, hey, let me go back to this and for whatever reason. So I said, okay. And then we went to his house. Didn't expect that, it would get into a situation where we would, like he would be performing oral sex on me. So one of the things that I did to show that I didn't like what was being done, I kind of clenched my fists or my hands in like an infant style or some kind of style. I didn't like it. And so he saw that and stopped. Then he brushed his teeth. I don't know how you can use the same toothbrush and brush your teeth, but he brushed his teeth. And then after that, would I go back and see that man ever again? No. I got home, told Serena. Serena's like, how could you let that happen? Why would you let that happen? I don't really think I had an answer for her, or I don't think that I could really fully explain. And I was crying. I was in the shower, and that's my experience with that. Would I talk to that man ever again? No. Then, and so this is what they want to use as ammo. And that man, it turns out that he was older, and I guess he must have knew about the wizards and sorcerers and hidden devices and all that kind of stuff, whatever. So he would have been considered, he would have been considered a pedophile. Anyway, so we got that going on. I was 17 at the time. Then I think I would have moments where I would hang out with these people who I considered friends. We would go to, we went to this club, and this man must approach me, want to talk to me or whatever. Then went by his house at whatever time. I think I was about 18 or something. Then 18 or 19, and then it was just a bunch of rub up. We didn't have sexual intercourse, and he used lubricants and whatever. But that was pretty much the last time I would see him. We didn't have this prolonged relationship. Right. So that didn't work out. Then I tried to get, I guess, closer to God and stuff like that. Because after Enoch, I did some cowballing. I just wanted to I prayed and cried. And then I got closer to God. I went to that youth retreat, Fruit of the Spirit. that Elder Wayne Brown focused on. I believe that I believe he focused on that at retreat, if it wasn't somewhere else. But he was the speaker. All right. Um, I hope I'm not mistaken. But if I am, pardon me. Then um then I met up in junior year during whatever with a friend or whatever. She said something like, because the wizard was saying to her, "You want a boyfriend?" I was just focused on school and God, especially sophomore year. And then we went to someone's house, like two men lived there, whatever. But she was more about chilling with some of these individuals. Um, and one of the guys came, and I guess his wizard on the device influenced him, compelled him to do this. He just kissed me. Okay, so that happened, and then I experienced some downtime or something that discouraged me or whatever. And but I think with that individual was just, I think sometime in September or before September of two. I can't quite remember the year, but it was before 2007, I believe. If it wasn't 2007, between 2006 and 2007. Yes. Kiss up and rub up. But then he was missing his ex-girlfriend. So we didn't I stopped we didn't talk much after that. Then then I worked at Butchie's, met Joel. I think he's Latino, if he wasn't Latino, Hispanic. And kiss up and rub up, but the wizard gave me a very like scary projection of him like a demon. So I stopped talking to him after that. Then I think that was senior year 2007. Then who did I? Then I met Daniel in 2007. If you want to hear more about that, you can listen to part 72 or 71. And prayed and cried after that. And that cut off in February of 2008. I believe, yeah, February 2008. And then I met the certain man, I won't say his full name, who did something, and I just did not, I didn't like it. And I guess my husband did the similar thing. I don't know if he knew that I didn't like it, but maybe that's his way of expressing that he didn't like me talking to that individual or whatever. So anyway, he would carry on in front of the camera, that one. He would carry on in front of the camera. Anyway, then I was involved in church. And it's good to be busy and involved in church and in the house of the Lord. But this is what the adversary would do. They would send men into the house of the Lord. And I guess, I'm not saying that, it's not God's will for them to come at that time, but considering this certain individual that after I left, he left kind of thing. Um, I told like Kevin Ramsey, certain, like if he didn't want to go in that direction with me, that we would have to part ways. And I brought it up too at the Winter Bible Conference. And I approached him about this certain female because they were giving me projections or dreams, projected dreams about Janelle. And I went to him about twice on the female, and he never admitted the truth. And on Mother's Day, the wizard was carrying on, and they wanted me to separate from him, and I was working on that. But then things started to, like, it seemed like a storm was coming, and it's like things are out of your power or control. At that time, I didn't know about wizards and sorcerers on the devices, and then things being made bigger than what it should be made. This big drama. And then I was defending him when the wizard and sorcerer want to say something insulting about him through my mom, and she kicked me out. Then on my way to Sister Paulette's house, he admits to being this individual who had sex with Janelle and got her pregnant at one point. And he asked me if I'm okay, and I'm like, I'm okay, but he knew that I really wasn't okay. And then I believe that moved me to tears, because that was unnecessary. I didn't have to experience that, but that's what those wizards and sorcerers, they're about: marginalizing me, trying to get me out of ministry, try to move me, try to make me think horrible about myself, negative things about myself. And I mean, all that. With him, it was just rub up, and we kissed once. Someone asked me if I had sex with him. Maybe they overheard the moaning or the sounds. And I said, no, we didn't have sex. And so that was done. And so coming into Barry University, and I felt like I needed more in my life to just give out more kind of thing. And then when I got to this congregation, I just felt like I needed to sit down and learn some things, and I did learn some things. And 5 years between Kevin and Christopher, didn't speak to anyone. Then 2016, I met Christopher Delgado, my God-given spouse. And then I've shared how, he did the whole I love you, but I can't be with you. And then the love triangle he tried to do with with Simona, all that's unnecessary. And then the reason behind Ian Main, and then after Ian Main, the wizards were on the device projecting Mike, and I'm thinking, hey, I need to resolve some things with Mike. That was the impression I'm getting. I asked a friend if I should speak to him, and this friend was like, no to Christopher Delgado, yes to, well, I'll say it like this. She was saying, he may be the one, when he was talking when referring to Ian Main. And then when it came to Mike, she would say yes to go and speak to Mike, not knowing it's the wizard and sorcerer behind all of that. And then whatever happened with Mike, I mean, he apologized for some things. And that's pretty much it. Is there anything that somebody needs to be jealous of? No, considering the dynamics and what people think dating is about, and certain things they think they can do, and as long as it's not sexual intercourse or something like that. But for these wizards to bring up this stuff, it, especially age 17 or 17 to 18, these have to be pedophiles watching me if you're watching me sexually or watching me do these things. Um, so basically, God led me to a scripture concerning them, like, because I don't bring certain things of my youthful days to mind. I would try to be better than the next person. One of the prayers I prayed after this unnamed individual that I mentioned, that I touched on to some degree, I was praying either before him or after him, that I noticed, like, these situations where I would be like, men come in or whatever, but it's not going to marriage. What is that? Or a wedding ceremony, right? Because that's what I understood as marriage. And so basically, I started to pray for God to curse any man that would sleep with me before marriage. I curse lightning, thunder, and angel of the Lord stand between us, and all of that kind of prayer I was trying to pray. So I wasn't about this whole thing of like just keep on getting into moments of kiss up, rub up, and feel up. So that's pretty much it with that. And so nobody, I mean, after that prayer, certain types of rubbing me up stopped. Um, but and then what else? Clothes stayed on. And so you just have to pray a certain way, um so that's pretty much it. And then the whole thing, like, you go to a doctor, you get a pap smear, and they put their fingers to feel or whatever. Please don't make a big thing. Fingering is probably demonically inspired, because you don't need to do that. So anyway, that out of the way, that's pretty much it.